Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Good afternoon, or at least it's afternoon where I am. My name is Walter Clark Boutwell. I'm a physician and an author. I have written 3 books in one trilogy called Old Men and Infidels. They are, surprisingly, Outland Exile, the sequel to that is Exile's Escape, and the sequel to that is Melilla of the Scorch. I describe these as political fiction. That is, I wanted to explore a political question I had for myself, and do it in as uncurrent a way as possible, so that nobody would be reading into it, political jokes, because this is all set 120 years into the future. And I said it there very specifically so that it wouldn't be viewed as current news. My question was, how does the physical age of a country, it's sort of how it understands its average age to be, change the politics of the country? And you've got a good deal, hello Precious, how are you? A good deal of data on young countries. There are a lot of young countries. The youngest one I know of, and Romeo, good name, is Niger in West Africa. The average age is 13. I've got socks older than that. But, where do these young countries come from? What kind of terrible thing happened that they're so young? Well, actually, nothing bad. It is Western medicine, Western improvement in transportation, intolerance to war, and it has given, babies don't die in the first year of life. I'm a pediatrician. I know this. And they are, so you have this big bulge in young people, and they don't don't die of old age. So these young countries also have older population. Ghana, as an example, from the Second World War, changed from its life expectancy, the oldest you were expected to live being the high 40s, into, or the mid 40s, the high 60s. So simultaneously, Ghana, which has now a mean age of 22, is becoming older and younger. So a lot of what I'm saying is the world is becoming older and younger. You have old people there to tell you, we tried that and it didn't work, which I think is valuable information. And you have young people who always want to experiment, as well they might. But usually the experiments tend to, as most of these young countries, at least part of the time, become socialist and then try to become not socialist. And that's a much tougher thing to do. I'll be picking up questions here, any that are proposed, and I'll try to answer them in line as they're asked. So to answer that question, I create two countries. The U.S. falls apart 30 years from now, and then 70 years after that, the story gets up and running, and that is Outland Exile. I take an individual from the young country where everybody expects to live to be 40 and then to disappear. They're not quite sure what happens to them, but they're told they retire. They don't. And she's dropped into the old country, which is not a utopia at all. The first country is free healthcare, full employment, computerless surfing, recreational drugs at really quite reasonable prices, and again, retirement at 40. The old country is scrabbling to stay alive. It's lost land to Canada, to a separated west coast of the U.S., and also to this East Coast utopia. But everybody expects to live to be 170. So this young person, this middle-aged, she's 17. If you live to be 40, 17 is fairly middle-aged. Now is captured by another middle-aged individual who is 76. If you live to be 170, 76 is kind of middle-aged. So you now have these two middle-aged people, and she is just entirely grossed out by somebody. She's never seen anybody older than 39. He doesn't look 76. I look like I'm 76, but he doesn't. He looks like he's in his mid-40s. And so she disdains, he thinks he's sort of a subhuman and is trying to kill him all the time. And he, because she's valuable to his nation, is trying to keep her alive all the time. And that's the first half of this book. The final ability to trust each other starts in this book and ends in the last book, where they eventually get together romantically, which was a tough decision to take when I was writing this. When did I start writing? I started, medical English is hardly English at all. Nobody does anything. Patients are taken to the operating room. They're draped in the usual fashion. McBurney's point is identified. I mean, it's all it's all passive. And I had to unlearn a lot of medicalese in order to get back to writing actual English. So I've been writing for fun for probably 10 years. Well, no, 15 years now. And I started on this project, which I thought was going to, I actually at the beginning thought this was going to be a short story, which was, like 50,000 words. And I blew by 50,000 words without, without noticing. And I said, oh, well, I guess it's a book. And I blew by 150,000 words. And I said, well, I guess it's 2 books. And I looked back and chopped where I could, tried to mend the wound, and that is Outland Exile. So I started working on Outland Exile in 2013, but bits and pieces of the original story, the original stuff I was writing in 2013 wind up in all 3 books. So then the second book, I expanded and did a lot of things I wanted to do of weaving, trying to see if I can weave together people's stories and create enough tension within them so that at the end of the book, all of these things sort of come together. And I think I was modestly successful with that. I liked, people ask me which book do I like the most, and it's the one I'm reading. I reread all of my books at least 5-6 times because I need to maintain some continuity with them. But I enjoy the process of re-examining what I could have said as well. I would say that differently now, and that sort of thing. The third part is and for Exile's Escape. Notice that it is Exile's Escape. It's a plural. There are numerous exiles. There's an American spy who has essentially exiled himself to the Unity, the country, the young country that I've created, for the benefit of Middle America, what I call the RSA, and he knows he's living in hostile territory. There's Malila, who was the Outland exile, and now she's in her own country and has been exiled from how she says it is. She wants to get back to the RSA where she can see the stars, see the smile of a baby, and hold the hand of the old man. I just got a question. Are there any scenes you cut from the story? There is a really important part of writing that is what I call scaffolding. There are some stories you have to write and you keep writing, and then when you go back to editing, which I actually enjoy, you take down all the scaffolding. So are there some scenes cut from the story? Any number of them. Specifically, one is I have Malila, who is the protagonist, have a dream in the second book. It was actually written for the first book, but it made it over long. And so I transposed it, changed its meaning, changed a bit of its content in order to still use the material, but use it in a different fashion. But a lot of, you're always picking and choosing. But when you get really excited about something and you have to go back and look at how it works for the reader. because it was fun to write, I had a, a dialogue between two guys, and Malila was the audience without her knowing it, and it was a joke on her, and it really didn't fit there. I had fun writing it, but you have to kill your darlings. And that's a phrase that you may well hear over and over again, is you can't use everything that you think is clever. You have to think about what the book's going to be like, because the book is has to move from place to place and has to do it efficiently, and you have to use all the parts that you've got, and not have and not go off on tangents, like I've been doing here, because the editing process gets rid of that sort of thing. So this book is her, several people's escape, including Jesse Johnstone, who is the old man. He's frequently the old man, the first of the old ones, because and you don't hear his backstory until the second and the third book. And he's sort of exiled himself to the wilderness of the East Coast, east side of the Mississippi drainage, to get away from his enemies. The denouement is Melilla of the Scorch. What I realized when I started writing this is I had to keep these two warring countries apart. You can't have warring countries sharing a border and not come to peace in some fashion. And I didn't want that. I wanted them to be continuing to war. So I had the idea of separating them with a no man's land populated by sentient plants that are a fallout of the original war between the two countries. There's a question: is what period of your life do you find you write most often? Write about most often? Well, obviously, as I get older, I can write about older things. There's a lot of me in all of this. I probably don't write much about being a teenager. You can't make me go through being a pubescent boy again, for all the money in China. Think about it. Being a teenager is very uncomfortable. Of course, Malila's a teenager, but she's acting middle-aged. Being a teenager is probably my least favorite epoch in time, because you're always becoming. And that's something you only get rid of very slowly and partially. We are all of us becoming. I remember reading a book, a narrative about someone who says, everybody's, if I do things, everybody's going to figure out I'm a fraud. Yeah, I went to college. Yeah, I went to this and I do this and I know this and I've done that, but I'm just a kid, I'm just becoming. And if I try to do this, everybody will realize what a fraud I am. And the thing is, we all think that. We all think we're frauds until we actually get into the business of our lives and go on in spite of being a feeling like we're frauds. And I certainly, I had what you would call a very long adolescence. That is, I only finished my training when I was 30. And, that is that I continued to work until I was 70 years old, but that's a long time to be preparing to become. And by the time I got out, I was feeling pretty confident. But you always have this sensation you want to become. As a child, it's always a limited viewpoint, and what do adults look like to a 3-year-old? Nostrils, that's all they see. They look up and they see chins and nostrils, and hands. So that's about the only identifiable thing children see. That's why you have to get down to them. You can't lean over them. You have to get down and talk to babies. And as an adult, well, as a curmudgeon, you have all this long information that is in perhaps better focus, and most of the time nobody's willing to think about it because you're not working. And in the U.S. in particular, work defines you. Other societies, that's not true. So when I say I'm retired, everybody goes, oh, yeah. At any rate, Melilla of the Scorch. The Scorch is a jungle, but it's a sentient jungle, and it will not let you pass unless it wants you to. And so these armies are kept apart, but the Scorch can become a kingmaker. And Melilla emerges with a message: we can be friends to you, or we can be friends to them. What is it? What I do for writing, the question is, how long does it take you to write a book? Probably about 18 months, because when I get to the point of, let me give you an example. I know when I started Melilla was in November of 2017, and it was published by the very end of 2019. And that's, so I got the manuscript done in quite reasonable amount of time, and I was working all the time. But my style is to write a book, get up early and write about 500 words a day. If you say a typical science fiction book, which this is not a typical one, is about 100,000 words, you're looking at 200 days, which is 8 months, about 7 months, 8 months, like that. Considering that you then go into the editing process and clear away all your scaffolding and tighten up the narrative, and I generally write about 50% more than I need, so that I can cut away without worrying about it. Do you have a preferred environment when writing? You're looking at it. This is a little corner of my bedroom. I can look outside and see my hound dog. I can have a cup of coffee. When I'm writing, I usually am listening to a bit of music, and I just get up at 5:30 and start plunking away. I don't keep everything I write, and neither my best advice to a young writer would be to write, to keep putting down words one after the other, and only much later go back and edit it. You can't edit nothing. you have to have something to begin with. And that's the discipline that people talk about. And you need isolation. The question, are you working on new materials too during your free time? When you're writing, you don't really have free time. I don't. I wrote these books on the Danube, in any number of hotel rooms, in Kenyatta Airport, on the sea off Bali, in the Tokyo Airport. I've written these, passages of these books. Oh, in Israel, I actually had a real epiphany of how to get around a problem. In Jerusalem, it's a matter of every day you've got to do it. Now, free time, does that mean I don't go on vacation? Well, yes, I do, but I take the writing stuff along because you don't want to lose track of things. The thread, or the story arc of this, even the way it's been expanded, has remained the same. I wanted to see the whole story arc of the young middle-aged and the old middle-aged, and them coming together. But Jesse, at the end, Jesse is dying. He's hallucinating, and he's telling all the incidents of his life. And Malila says it felt to her like a ball of yarn, that he was unwrapping his life, unrolling his life, and would there be anything left of him after his life had been, or had he been turned from a person into just incident? He remarks earlier that there are people that don't know his name. He's just Doc. He is frontier doctor sort of thing. And is he just incident? And only when he meets up with a childhood friend who is one of those sentient plants, and they have wounded each other, and now they come back together and they heal each other. And the Jungian phrase, only the wounded may heal, only those who have been hurt are needing to be healed, and only those people who are hurt are capable of helping someone else heal. And so these two old friend enemies are capable of healing each other's defects, with a price, and there's always a price. So the plant says, yes, I can condemn you to long life and the love that you deserve, who is Malila. I can't pronounce that, but it's good to see you again. This, and if you're familiar with Arthur's Tales of the Round Table, this is the Fisher King. The Fisher King and Gawain wound each other and heal each other, which is one of the several varieties of it. So there are a lot of internal revelations in these books. I use poetry very widely because I find it evocative. One of the points that I'm trying to make, not so much in this book, but in the next series, my next series, I'm planning on calling The Silence and the Gods, for very specific reasons, refers to Shelley's poem on occasion of I am Ozymandias King of Kings, look on my works and despair, as an inscription found on this broken statue in the middle of a desolate desert. You know, where are his works? They're all gone. Nobody, people always die. Empires always are given away to somebody else. So I hope I've given you some. I hope new writers have gotten a little idea of the process, a process of writing, and an idea of the books I have. Look out for Silence and the Gods, which I would say is about 2/3 done. And I hope to, if you're interested in hearing me blather on, I've got this booth tomorrow, well, Friday for sure. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be able to make it tomorrow. Very good. I don't know if we're going to